The card declined a second time at 3:08 p.m., and the red message on the register screen seemed louder than the scanner's hard beep. Benefit unavailable. Contact issuer. Maya Trent read, while Isaiah Dillard had 12 minutes left before his bus pulled away. Cold air pressed against the sweat at the back of his neck. The aisle smelled of floor cleaner, warm cardboard, and cinnamon from the bakery rack. Behind him, a shopping cart with one bent wheel clicked against the tile while someone sighed. Isaiah kept one hand on the brown envelope beneath his arm and the other beside 6 items on the belt: oatmeal, rice, canned beans, powdered milk, apples, and wheat bread. "Run it once more," he said. Maya tapped the screen. "It already told us twice." A man farther back muttered that some people always had a reason when a benefit card stopped working. Another shopper checked her phone and asked how long this would take. Isaiah looked above Maya's shoulder at the round wall clock. His bus left at 3:20. The county labor record office was 19 miles away, and the envelope under his arm had a deadline printed across the front. Appeal intake closes 4:30 p.m. "There's a private support number for that code," Isaiah said. "Please call it." Maya glanced at the line. "Sir, I can't hold everyone here while you sort out an inactive card. You do not know that it is inactive." The store manager started toward Register 6 from the customer service desk. Isaiah could feel the rough string of the envelope pressing into his palm. Inside were 7 months of work: old wage copies, fuel receipts, handwritten schedules, and a form he had rewritten twice to keep every date exact. None of it mattered if the office did not stamp it before closing. Outside the glass doors, 18 motorcycles rolled into the white heat of the parking lot. Their engines stopped one by one, leaving the store's fluorescent hum strangely exposed. Isaiah reached for his wallet to show that the card and identification carried the same name. His thumb caught the softened corner of an old photograph tucked behind his license. The picture slipped loose, struck the floor beside his shoe, and landed face down. He bent, but the brace beneath his left trouser leg slowed him. The manager was getting closer. So was a tall man in a faded leather vest who had just entered from the bright parking lot. The stranger noticed the fallen photograph, then the deadline envelope, then the clock. He stopped before touching anything. Who would pick up the picture first? And what story would they decide it told? A woman waiting beside the candy display reached the photograph before Isaiah did. She lifted it by one corner, turned it over, and stared long enough for the next 2 people in line to lean closer. The faded image showed a younger Isaiah standing beside a passenger vehicle blackened by smoke. Around him were 18 boys wearing work jackets, thin blankets, and clothes that did not quite fit. Several had close-cropped hair. One had a swollen lip. Another looked away from the camera with both hands hidden inside his sleeves. "That explains a few things," the woman said. A man behind her gave a short laugh. Someone asked whether the benefit card might even belong to Isaiah. The conclusion spread without anyone needing to state it clearly. A burned vehicle, a group of hard-looking teenagers, an older man with no cash for groceries. Maya did not accuse him of fraud, but she did not stop the remarks either. The manager arrived and asked Isaiah to step away from the register while they verified ownership and eligibility. The formal words made the suspicion feel official. Isaiah held out his hand. "That picture belongs to me." Before the woman returned it, the tall biker spoke. "May I look at it before you put it back?" His voice was quiet enough that the people who wanted to hear had to stop speaking. He was broad across the shoulders, with gray beginning at his temples and a thin burn scar around his left wrist. Through the glass doors, the left saddlebag of his dark green Road King showed 7 brass rivets where the leather had been repaired. 17 other riders entered behind him, carrying empty water jugs and bags of ice. But they did not gather around the register. They stopped wherever there was space. Isaiah studied the man's face. "You can look at the front. You do not turn it over unless I say." The biker nodded. "Understood." The photograph passed into his hand. He did not begin with the boys. He looked at the vehicle, specifically at a smoke-darkened rectangle near the rear wheel. The letters RQ. 7 were barely visible. Then he studied a triangular metal patch on the side panel. His expression did not become angry or sentimental. It became exact. "Gauge. one of the riders said from several feet away. The biker did not answer. Isaiah noticed the old aluminum key tag hanging from the man's belt loop. 3 stamped characters caught the fluorescent light. RQ7. The people in line saw what they believed was recognition between men from the same troubled past. Isaiah saw the biker's scarred hand become completely still. Why would a man who had never spoken to him before carry the same vehicle number that appeared in a photograph nearly 30 years old? The manager pointed toward customer service. Mr. Dillard, we can move your transaction over there and keep this line moving. The suggestion sounded reasonable. Isaiah looked at the 2 people already waiting near the service counter, then at the clock. If he moved, the 3:20 bus would leave without him. The error can be checked here, he said. I have an appointment. One of the riders reached for his wallet. Let us cover the groceries. Isaiah answered before the money appeared. No, the rider stopped. It is only a few dollars. It is my food and my card. Leon, the manager, lowered his voice. Accepting help would get you out faster. Isaiah looked at him. It would get me out of your line. It would not fix what happened. The rider put his wallet away without argument. Gideon Rusk, the biker the others called Gage, handed back the photograph without turning it over. What happens if you miss the bus? He asked. The question did not defend Isaiah or accuse anyone else. It simply forced the room to notice that the clock might matter for a reason. Isaiah lifted the brown envelope. Labor record appeal. Intake closes at 4:30. Gideon saw the bus ticket between the papers. County office, 19 miles. Another bus. Tomorrow. The deadline is today. The manager began explaining that the store could not be responsible for county transportation. Gideon nodded. It is not. I'm asking what the delay costs him. Isaiah set the envelope on the narrow counter beyond the groceries and opened it just enough to show the arrangement inside. The papers were clipped by date. 2 fuel receipts were protected in a clear sleeve. A handwritten shift calendar had been copied on a fresh paper because the original was becoming brittle. Even the 6 groceries had been planned to the cent after coupons. There was no disorder in the way Isaiah handled his life. There was only not enough money and not enough time. Maya looked again at the screen. The machine still says unavailable. Gideon asked, does it say stolen? No. Does it say fraudulent? No. Does it say the car belongs to someone else? Maya hesitated. No. Gideon looked at the people behind Isaiah. Then when did a system error become a verdict about him? Nobody answered. The wall clock moved to 3:12. Outside, heat shimmered above the motorcycle tanks. Isaiah gathered his papers, but a line at the bottom of the denial letter remained visible for 1 second longer than the rest. Gideon caught the phrase supplemental evidence. He did not yet know what it meant. He only knew Isaiah had been trying to prove something long before the card failed. Why was a man with decades of work behind him using food benefits while racing to convince the county that the work had existed at all? Gideon asked the question only after Isaiah had returned the photograph to the counter. May I turn it over now? Isaiah looked beyond him at the riders waiting near the front windows. None had moved closer. None had raised a voice. You may, Isaiah said. You read it to yourself. Gideon turned the picture. 18 names were written in blue ink across the back, followed by date. His own name appeared 7th, Gideon Rusk. At the bottom, partly hidden by a crease, were 6 words and a time. All 18 accounted for, 2:14 a.m. His breath stopped for half a second. The people in line saw a list of names and assumed it was a roster of some old crew. One shopper whispered that the boys might have set the fire themselves. Another pointed at the blackened vehicle, as though smoke alone proved guilt. The photograph seemed to confirm whatever they already believed, because no one knew how to read the smaller details. Gideon did. The triangular metal patch on the side panel was not decoration. He had helped Isaiah hold it in place while the sealant dried after RQ7 struck a low stone wall. The blankets around the boys were not gang colors. They were fire station blankets with narrow reflective bands. The oval shape on Isaiah's shirt was the maintenance patch used at Red Corps Youth Center. On the vehicle's hood sat a round clock with scorched glass. Its hand stopped at 2:14. Gideon touched the aluminum key tag on his belt. I have carried this since I was 17, he said. It opened the emergency box in that bus. Isaiah corrected him immediately. Passenger vehicle. The county did not insure it as a bus. The correction made several riders exchange looks. Isaiah remembered RQ-7 as equipment under his responsibility, not as part of a heroic legend. Gideon held the photograph low, keeping the names away from the crowd. Did you write them? At the fire station. Why? A deputy asked for a head count. No administrator had arrived. Maya looked again at the boys in the image. The picture had not changed, but the smoke now looked less like evidence of wrongdoing and more like the remains of something survived. Gideon pointed toward the clock in the photograph. Was that when the fire started? Isaiah took the picture back. No, he slid it into the wallet with care. That was when we confirmed the last boy was out. The line had become quiet. Leon looked at the wall clock. It was 3:15. The bus would leave in 5 minutes. If Gideon had been one of those boys, and if all 18 had been counted at 2:14, what had Isaiah done before the camera ever came out? Gideon drove Isaiah toward the county office on the dark green road King. Isaiah would not leave without a spare helmet, and he would not leave until Maya placed his groceries in a labeled bag behind customer service instead of returning them to the shelves. The motorcycles pulled away at 3:21, 1 minute after the bus had gone. Hot wind pressed Isaiah's shirt against his back. Beyond Arden Furnace, the smell of asphalt gave way to dry grass and diesel. Gideon did not ask Isaiah to tell the story from the beginning. At a red light, he asked one narrow question. Were you working at Red Quarry that night? Night maintenance, Isaiah said. Relief driver when needed. Will you pay for that shift? Isaiah looked past Gideon's shoulder toward the road. I was supposed to be. The fire had started in a failed heating unit after midnight. Smoke moved into 2 sleeping wings before the alarm panel fully registered. The director was out of town. The supervisor could not be reached. Isaiah used RQ-7 to move the boys in 2 trips to the volunteer fire station. Gideon remembered cold concrete, scratchy blankets, and Isaiah counting them again and again with a carpenter's pencil. He had remembered the night as a rescue. Isaiah remembered it as labor carried out under dangerous conditions. After the center changed contractors, Isaiah said, 4 months of records were entered differently. Night transport, emergency maintenance, weekend callouts. They called it volunteer work, community support. The phrase had sounded harmless on paper. In practice, it removed 4 months of pension credit and placed Isaiah below the threshold for the full benefit he had expected. The missing amount made rent tight and medicine uncertain. SNAP had become temporary support while he fought the record. Gideon understood then that the photograph was not the entire proof. It showed the event, the vehicle, and the people. The fuel receipts might show RQ-7 moved. The work calendar might show Isaiah expected wages. What they still needed was a chain strong enough to connect duty to payment. At 3:46, they stopped beneath the rusted canopy of an abandoned filling station. The riders shut off their engines and stood in the thin shade while Gideon read the denial letter from top to bottom. Near the end, smaller print stated that supporting material could be filed after a timely appeal had been received. He read the line again. They do not need the whole case today. Isaiah tightened the string around the envelope. They need to agree to take the case. The problem had changed. The store had been about stopping humiliation. The county office would be about preventing a missing record from becoming permanent. But who would help prove a paid shift after the employer, the contractor, and nearly 3 decades had all moved on? The Ash Mile riders handled the problem without speeches or spectacle. Gideon asked everyone to work only from facts they personally knew or records they could locate. Carla Wynn, a bookkeeper who had been the 3rd name on the photograph, copied the appeal clause and marked the deadline. Another rider searched the local newspaper archive. Gideon called the county fire station and requested the dispatch log tied to Red Quarry and vehicle RQ-7. Isaiah sat on the low concrete base of an old fuel pump and arranged his papers by date. When one rider began saying Isaiah had driven them before the fire, Isaiah stopped him. You saw me at the station afterward. Do not improve the truth for me. The rider nodded and crossed the claim from his notes. A few minutes later, Gideon reached a retired firefighter named Paul Hensley. The line crackled. Gideon explained the date, the vehicle, and the reason for calling. There was a long silence. Then the old man said, "I remember the driver." Gideon put the call on speaker only after Isaiah agreed. Hensley continued. He counted those boys 3 times. A deputy told him they were all there, and he counted again. Isaiah looked down at the brown envelope. "Do you remember whether I was on duty?" he asked. Hensley did not rush to help. "I remember the maintenance patch. I remember the county radio calling you Red Quarry Transport. I cannot swear what payroll called you." "That is enough," Isaiah said. "Say only that." The call ended with Hensley agreeing to provide a statement the following morning. The newspaper archive located an index entry, but not the article itself. The fire station confirmed that dispatch records existed on microfilm, though retrieving them would take days. Nothing they found could resolve the claim before 4:30. At 4:02, the riders reached the county labor record office, a low brick building with narrow windows and a flag hanging still in the heat. Gideon told the group to park at the far end of the lot and enter in small numbers. "We are not here to make anybody afraid," he said. "We are here to leave a record." Inside, the lobby smelled of toner, old carpet, and burnt coffee. Isaiah signed the visitor sheet himself. A clerk took his envelope through a side door. At 4:07, Claudia Marrow emerged holding it. Her reading glasses rested on a chain, and her expression was weary rather than cruel. "Mr. Dillard," she said, "we have reviewed this matter before. The service period you claim does not appear in our system." Gideon heard the distinction. Claudia did not say the work had never happened. She said the system did not contain it. The new risk was clear. They had begun finding evidence, but the office might refuse to open a file long enough to receive any of it. Claudia's reasons were measured and, at first, difficult to challenge. The photograph was personal memorabilia, not a payroll record. The fuel receipts showed vehicle use, but not the purpose of the trip. Isaiah's handwritten calendars had been created by Isaiah. Red Quarry's private contractor had dissolved decades earlier. The people in the photograph had not yet submitted sworn statements. "I am not saying the night did not happen," Claudia said. "I am saying the material before me does not establish pensionable employment." Several writers lowered their eyes because that part was true. A county could not alter a pension record because 18 people remembered a man with gratitude. Isaiah understood the difference better than anyone. At 4:23, Claudia slid the envelope back across the counter. "Bring certified supporting records during the next intake cycle." The sentence landed harder than the laughter at the grocery store. Strangers had judged Isaiah because they knew nothing. Claudia had read his papers and still found a procedural reason to make him wait another year. His shoulders lowered slightly. He placed a photograph on top of the envelope. It no longer looked like proof of guilt. It looked like proof that something real had happened and could still be erased because it did not fit the correct category. "Maybe next year," Isaiah said. Gideon did not tell him not to give up. He picked up the denial letter and looked at the paragraph Carla had marked. Then he asked Claudia, "Are you denying his claim or refusing to receive his appeal?" Claudia looked over her glasses. "The evidence is incomplete." That was not the question. "This office cannot approve pension credit on what you have brought." He is not asking for approval today. Claudia reached for a policy binder. A valid submission requires a factual basis. Gideon pointed to the appeal form, the challenge decision, and the date. Those identify the decision and the dispute. "Your letter says supporting evidence may follow." Claudia found a section concerning evidentiary sufficiency, but it applied to final review, not intake. She turned several pages. The room grew quiet. Gideon did not crowd her. He did not use the riders behind him as a threat. He simply waited beside the words her office had mailed. Isaiah watched the digital clock change to 4:24. He began gathering his photograph and receipts as though preparing to leave. Gideon placed 2 fingers on the edge of the envelope, not to take it from him, but to keep the pages in order. "Mr. Dillard," he said, "do you still want to file?" Isaiah looked at the stamp on Claudia's desk. "I came here to file." The photograph had changed meaning again. It was not enough to win the pension. It was enough to show that 18 witnesses and one documented event deserved formal review. Could Claudia legally demand the finished case before allowing the case to begin? At 4:26, Gideon asked the riders to sit in the public chairs. They placed their helmets beneath their feet and left Isaiah alone at the counter. The room no longer felt crowded. It felt exact. Isaiah arranged the papers himself. First came the signed appeal. Second, the pension decision he was contesting. Third, the photograph showing RQ, 7, 18 boys, and a handwritten time of 2:14 a.m. Fourth, a page containing the current names and contact information of every person in the picture. Fifth, the written request to submit additional evidence after intake. Gideon placed his old aluminum key tag beside the photograph. He did not call it proof. He called it identification of the vehicle. Claudia asked whether the witnesses could be verified. Gideon showed his driver's license and the seventh name on the back of the photograph. Carla did the same with the third. The others passed their identification forward one at a time. No one approached as a group. No one described Isaiah as a hero. Each person confirmed only one fact. He or she was one of the 18 names recorded that night. Gideon read from his notes. 2:14 in the morning, final head count. For months of service disputed. 18 identifiable witnesses. 30 days requested for supporting records. Claudia glanced at the clock. This filing may still fail. Isaiah nodded. Then let it fail after review. The archive may not support your account. Then the archive should be read. Intake is not a determination in your favor. I know. Isaiah placed one finger beneath his signature. His hand did not shake. You do not need to decide the whole case in the next 4 minutes. You need to receive the appeal before the deadline your office gave me. Claudia looked back at the binder. The rule in front of her described what a person had to identify, the decision being challenged, the reason for disagreement, and the relief requested. Isaiah's papers did all three. Nothing in the intake section required every future exhibit to be present. The pressure in the room did not come from leather, engines, or numbers. It came from the fact that everyone else had accepted the limits of the process. Claudia alone was trying to add a requirement the process did not contain. The digital clock changed to 4:27. Claudia closed the binder. She reached for the rectangular intake stamp, turned the date wheels, and pressed it into the blue ink pad. Isaiah did not move. Gideon did not speak. 18 people watched the stamp hover above the page that would determine whether 4 missing months remained missing. Would Claudia protect the convenience of the record, or allow the record to be tested? The stamp came down at 4:27 p.m. Claudia pressed firmly, leaving a complete blue rectangle at the top of Isaiah's appeal. She tore off the timestamp receipt and handed it to him. Supporting evidence is due within 30 days. Isaiah checked the date and placed the receipt inside the brown envelope. That is all I asked today. No one cheered. The riders had not proved the pension claim. They had only stopped the door from closing. Over the next month, the evidence arrived piece by piece. The fire station produced a dispatch log showing RQ, 7 at the volunteer station, and a final head count at 2:14 a.m. A fuel slip carried Isaiah's employee code. An insurance schedule listed him as an authorized relief driver. The newspaper archive recovered a brief report identifying him as Red Quarry's night maintenance worker. Paul Hensley gave a sworn statement describing the 2 vehicle trips and Isaiah's repeated count. The contractor transfer file revealed that 4 months of personnel data had never been imported completely. The 18 riders submitted individual statements limited to what each person had directly seen. At the final review, Claudia read records that matched across different sources without relying on one dramatic piece of evidence. The photograph now connected people, place, vehicle, and time. The remaining documents connected those facts to paid duty. The county restored Isaiah's 4 months of service, recalculated his pension, and issued the back pay owed to him. Claudia signed the correction herself. She also requested a manual review of other Red Quarry files affected by the same transfer gap. At the grocery store, Maya had kept Isaiah's 6 items labeled behind customer service. When he returned, She did not make a public speech. I treated a machine error like proof about your character, she said. That was my decision, not the machine's. Isaiah paid after the address mismatch on his EBT account was corrected. He accepted the apology without being asked to comfort her. Weeks later, a small privacy screen appeared at Register 6, along with a silent button for benefit card errors. At the county office, timestamp receipts became automatic for every appeal delivered before closing. The changes were modest, but they remained after everyone stopped talking about what had happened. Gideon later offered Isaiah 12 paid hours a week managing tools and safety records at Ashmile Trade Garage. Isaiah asked for the job description, the hourly rate, and the rules in writing. He accepted only after Gideon agreed that his photograph would never be used for fundraising. On his first morning, Isaiah installed a sign-out sheet beside the tool cabinets. Every wrench gets recorded, he said, every hour or two. A large copy of the old photograph was placed on the garage wall beside the recovered clock stopped at 2:14 and the corrected service decision. 18 small metal nameplates ran beneath it. The original photograph stayed in Isaiah's wallet, where it had always belonged. Under the display, a single line was fixed to the wall. No one is only the record left behind about them. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe for more biker stories. This is a fictional story created for entertainment and reflection. Any resemblance to real people, places, organizations, clubs, or events is purely coincidental.